All right, guys and gals. SCPs and RCPs. I want to ask a first question. Who's familiar with SCPs and RCPs? So good portion. What we're going to talk about today, I'm Matt Carroll, by the way. I'm product at Sonrai, so I'm vendor. This is Chris. Chris is CISO. So when I say something, he's going to make sure that it sounds like it's real and meaningful and truthful. So it's not just the vendor talking, right? But just to give you an idea why we're here. So why RCPs and why SCPs? What are they? First of all, they're global policies in AWS that allow you to take massive control over your cloud, right? That's a beautiful thing. There are 16,000 possible endpoints in AWS. There's about 4 different ways that AWS makes it possible to control permissions, with these being sort of the top of tree ultimate level of taking permissions away and governing what can be run and what can't be run. We have been at this for 6 years, 7 years. We've seen many clouds. I can promise you that the amount of RCPs and SCPs we actually see written and deployed is very low. And I can hypothesize why. You break your cloud very easily if you don't know what you're doing. So doing this effectively is the most significant way to reduce the risk in your cloud. It's also, can be kind of terrifying and can be kind of scary when we start working in these. I'm going to sort of give you guys 4 areas that we've seen over the time of building this product and previous products that we have. Scenarios that drove us to build this product. This product that we have built, it's called the Cloud Permissions Firewall, is an action product. It's not a visibility product. It was built for one purpose, which was there's a lot of things wrong in clouds. We want to give people the ability to fix them. We don't want to give people necessarily the ability. There's already 1,000 ways to look at the problem in the cloud. Another way, another dashboard, another set of alerts was not where people wanted us to go or where we needed to go. There were core problems we were trying to solve for, and we wanted to solve it from a let's fix the problem perspective. So I'm going to go through those, and then Chris will make sure that it sounds like it's actually a real problem. So challenges. Human identities need break glass access to production accounts, but standing in min privilege is a huge risk. Does anybody disagree with this? So when I say standing privilege, I mean identities in my cloud that carry very strong privilege, meaning IAM star, pure star, EC2 star, there's a whole amount of these, right? And this is very common. We get to this, even some of the biggest banks in the world we look at, and there are many identities running around with administrative level privilege and a lot of humans that carry a lot of standing privilege, meaning they can simply, when they want to, go into the most secure parts of these clouds. And so what we did here is we looked at the problem and said people need an efficient, low-friction way to accomplish just-in-time access to the cloud. And so that was one of the first problems we looked at and one of the first problems we wanted to solve. How do we make it very easy to remove all standing privilege, but give it back the minute somebody needs it in the most low-friction way possible? I want to give Chris your perspective on JIT. You have audio?
On JIT?
Yeah.
It's a must-have, number one. Yeah, you're right. Like, I would say that admins are infamous for that. They have to do something. They give themselves the privilege. They assign the privilege, and they leave the privilege 100% every time. They don't want to have to do it over and over and over. And that's always been the precursor of implementing JIT, is when you start to find those existing permissions that are over-permissioned or risky and, like I said, long-standing. So 100%, it's an issue.
Again, a great capability that we have solved for. Do we use RCPs and SCPs to solve for this? We absolutely do. This, by the way, is not about writing an SCP or an RCP. I should have said this up front. It's applications of them, and then we'll sort of look at how we solve those problems. Next slide, Chris. Old POV or canceled vendors still have access to our cloud. Who has a cloud here? Who runs a cloud? I know a couple of you run clouds. Do you know every vendor that has access to your cloud? So as we look at clouds, it was very common. So when you look at the current market and you're looking at CNAPP solutions, CSPM solutions, they do complain about this problem. But they complain about it in a very, let's call it an esoteric way. This account has an identity that's coming from the outside. This other account has an identity coming from the outside. This resource policy has, is sharing access to a cloud that's not yours. Giving organizations a unified view and then controlling those third parties. So I can see at a glance, here's every third party that's in my cloud. Palo Alto's here, Wiz is here, Qualys is here. Actually having a list of them, how broad their access is, what kind of access do they have, and moreover, the ability to say, why is Palo Alto still here? We moved away from them 5 years ago. And being able to at least take action to say, block that right now. We actually we launched as a partner with AWS back in November on resource control policies. This was the use case that was really prominent for us, which is how can we enable our customers to curate and control the third parties who have access to their cloud. Now, Chris, healthcare, what do third parties mean to you from an access perspective?
An APHI incident, number one. So, HIPAA brings a unique challenge in that there's not only a number of records threshold that crosses, if you cross, it's exponentially more damaging to your business, to your reputation, the amount of paperwork that you have to do with the Health and Human Services, and there's also a timeline. So you only have 60 days to remediate. So if you look back and all of a sudden you're like, hey, they've had access for 3 years, like you're automatically filing.
We just couldn't do this. It's okay, you keep talking.
So we're very, very strict around when we give access, how long they have it for, and actually makes it a lot easier.
I will say, so for those, I would love to show it. There's the evaluation. If anybody's ever looked at the IAM evaluation matrix of how IAM is actually evaluated in AWS, up until November, there was a little tiny block that not many people understood what it meant, but what that block meant was if the call's not coming from inside the house, everything you've done doesn't matter. Right, so it was the tiny little box that said, if this call is coming from outside of your organization, none of the SCPs that you've done, none of the identity-based policies you put in place, and none of the resource policies on those actually will truly enforce that protection. Resource control policies was the first time AWS came forward with a control. Now it is limited, it supports 5 services currently, S3, KMS, SNS, a few others, that really allows you to make a declarative statement that from here down in my tree, this will be the law of the land and what will control permissive access or not. So it sets the maximum set of permissive permissions or the maximum set of permissions available from here down. You were never able to do that around resources prior to November. And so what we have done here is, as Chris mentioned, given customers the ability to very quickly understand who's there and then use RCPs that we automate for them to take action on them, either locking them out or restricting their access to certain areas of the cloud.
Yeah, I think one other thing here is, like going back to the HIPAA, we have specific environments where we don't allow specific connections to exist. So this also acts as an audit mechanism for us. So it's very, when an auditor comes in or somebody asks what has access to that environment, and actually in the upcoming HIPAA updates, it will be required, not recommended. So our ability to show that is paramount.
Everyone know what the word ephemeral means? The lovely cloud word means things don't last very long. The ephemeral nature of cloud, especially around non-humans, makes maintaining least privilege a never-ending battle. So this was the crux, actually, of this entire product when we started this, which is we would deal with customers who have hundreds of AWS accounts. Some of them have north of 500,000 identities. And you're looking at these, and how many humans are in a cloud versus non-humans? Some people may have a guess. Somewhere between 10 and 20 to 1 is a good number when you're looking at most clouds. Meaning I have 20 non-humans to every person that may or may not enter that cloud. And those non-humans have this tendency over time to collect permission or go away entirely or come into existence, right? So you end up with this constant changing aspect of identity in your world. And at the same time, you're told I need to meet least privilege, meaning I have to make sure every single one of these identities has just the permissions that it needs. I'm not sure if you've ever tried to tackle 20 or 30 or 40,000 identities and get the least privilege policy on every one of them just to figure out that the one that you started with now needs a new one again because it's been 2 weeks and our developers just released another release. This never ends. And this was us realizing there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way to walk into these clouds and using the cloud's tools that are there that people are terrified of, SCPs primarily in this case. How can we orchestrate the authoring of SCPs to take into account all of this customer's data to understand what identities should have the most sensitive access to their cloud and what identities should not, even though they may be granted it? And so what we did is we came up with a way of analyzing that and give you a nice big button that says, if you hit this button, I will make sure that that service that you are using, or any number of those services that you are using, the identities that make the most sensitive calls are only the ones that have proven themselves to require it and the ones that you've approved to be there. And by the way, when you hit that button, that's true from here forward. That means new identities that appear with sufficient privilege to do the most sensitive things can't actually do it. And if they try, we step in and we start notifying people and asking questions. Should this brand new identity that just appeared in your production environment truly be creating roles and assigning privilege, right? Or even more interesting, should this Lambda execution role, which has been in your cloud for 4 years, just woke up in the middle of the night and the first thing it tried to do is create an internet gateway? Should that happen, right? And so what we came up with is a really, really interesting way of locking that down. Least privilege to you, how do you stay on top of it?
It's a very loaded vendor question there, but so we pushed the easy button. We bought Sonrai. Look, we've been at this for a long time. You know, as a CISO, as said, like I think the first time I got engaged, worked with Sonrai, we had just over 630,000 identities. There's no way. You can't hire enough people. You can't hire enough consultants. It's impossible. So.
And I was supposed to lead you on this one, and I forgot.
Sorry.
I do want to introduce something here. Often in security, we let perfection be the enemy of good. And so we see a lot of teams that don't start because they can't solve it perfectly. And unfortunately, that's the death blow for least privilege. I can't do it perfectly, but I have other things. Like I have to absolutely make sure I'm patching vulnerabilities, and I have to absolutely make sure I'm doing X, Y, and Z. What we've done here is very pragmatic, but it solves over 75 to 80% of the problem in cloud from an actual overprivileged perspective. There's this, I like to call it the dirty secret of least privilege. If anybody in the room will tell me that, not you, that describe EC2 instance and update security group are the same severity to you as an organization, least privilege says they are. And so we end up in this world of pedantic analysis trying to figure out what's the absolute best policy. By the way, while AWS doesn't log everything. So you don't know if it's used or not because it's not even logged by the platform. So you can never figure out the perfect policy. This is pragmatic, but effective. And you can hit this button at the very top of your tree, and we will take control of all of the identities below and ensure that they can't color outside the lines. And if they do, first person, we're going to stop. We're going to come to you guys and say, should this be happening, yes or no? If the answer is yes, we'll let them go. If the answer is no, there's a beautiful part of this, which is the answer is no because they were actually denied. And I don't want them to do it. They never actually succeeded. So I'm not trying to find my data on the dark web, then trying to figure out how it left. I'm actually stopping it before it actually even started, right? Next one, Chris, I apologize.
No.
And hundreds of services are available to developers. How many people know how many services in AWS there are? I said it this morning. Does anybody know? 490, that's high. It's actually, well, the last count I have is 432. Maybe it's 490. 16,000 permissions total. This was one that sort of has, in recent times, become more prominent for us. So the advent of AI services has actually caused people to look at service availability in AWS through a new lens. So whereas before we may not have concerned ourselves too much about SageMaker being on in a cloud and not really worried about anybody with admin privileges, IAM star could get a hold of SageMaker. With the advent of Bedrock, it's caused an interesting thing to happen in our customer base, which is, can we turn that off? I'm terrified of that AI models taking over my cloud. We need to make sure that we have the right governance in place before we can let our people use this. And it's actually expanded to, can we do this across all services and lock our environments down so that the service availability only matches what we need, right? In a production environment, maybe I only use 20 services in AWS. I've never seen any organization use more than 60 of all of AWS services at once, right? That varies across the entire base, but having 60 services individually used in any given account is exceptionally rare. Normally, these are 10, 12, 14 services. Locking it down means removing all that risk and ensuring that, why did I start with SageMaker? Anybody who came to the booth might have heard me say it. SageMaker and a few other services in AWS have some interesting API calls on them. What? There you go. Anybody know what a pre-signed URL is? 1, 2. It's a nice URL that sidesteps every network control you've ever put in place. And so your network team's working away diligently, ensuring that your firewalls are in place and all access points are controlled, and then somebody wanders in and says, I need a pre-signed URL, and I can use it to exfiltrate data or bring data into my cloud. If you don't use it, turn it off. And that's just one, by the way. There's about 1,000, 1,050 really sensitive permissions in AWS. That's what we do, is we focus on ring-fencing those permissions and ensuring that the services that need them have them on and can be used. All the other services are off. Governance for you.
Yeah, I think it goes back, as a CISO, I look at reducing our attack surface every day, right? And that attack surface is, the zombie accounts that have been left there forever, the unused services. If we're not, we're a SaaS application, we should have no more than, I think, 33 actually running. Now I can validate and then go back to and reduce the attack surface. You just have to. And then the permissions itself, that's a whole different ballgame. That's where the easy button comes in. But then it's also a little bit of the BS factor, right? I was on a call earlier before this, and they swore up and down that, no, you couldn't do this in a lower tier environment. Okay, so I can turn it all off then. Because you're sure of that, right? They're like, well, what do you mean turn it off? I said, well, we've implemented CPFW, so I can enable that the protection for that right now. And we'll see if you're right.
What was the answer?
Can we do some more testing, please? Hey, why don't you guys go run over there and take away those perms? 100%.
With no names, but we work with a lot of clouds, 5 accounts. We work with many accounts or clouds that have thousands of accounts. We had one customer, they were desperate to turn off Bedrock. They wanted it off. They had a reason to turn it off. And there's regulations in the US that they were trying to comply to where they said, we need this off right now from an audit perspective. They turned it off. They also turned off a big portion of their service that they delivered to their customer through that one action. So top line business came down when they did this action. And so this was something that we offer and our product solves for by delivering the right data to say to you, you can absolutely turn this off, because we've checked actually 6 different ways to arrive at service usage. If we tell you you can turn it off, you can absolutely turn it off. And what this does is it reduces a number of things. Obviously, the risk of all of those services running and the permissions that are associated to them. Again, it's not that SageMaker's a bad service. It's absolutely not a bad service. But if I can get into your cloud and get one identity, I can usually get to another one, and then we start trying to recon and understand where I can go, and eventually I can find or collect the permissions I want to construct the attack that I'm looking for, whether it's a foothold or an exfiltration. Turning these things off so that they can't be used against you by either a bad guy, a third party, somebody coming through a third party. That's another reason why third parties are so interesting. If a third party gets breached and they have access to your cloud, you're the next target as they bounce through the vendor or the customers of that particular vendor that you're dealing with. Right? Next one, Chris. Some takeaways, and we're at 20, so I want to make sure we're on time. Again, the reason we tackled this particular problem the way we did was these clouds are they're doing nothing but getting bigger. Most of our customers, I haven't met one yet that's actually smaller now than they were when we started working with them. They just grow. Accounts grow. I've had some customers go from 30 accounts to well over 250 accounts as they've actually increased their footprint. The identities in that increase, the number of third parties increase. The beautiful thing about what we've done here is we've allowed users, actually, click to the next slide there, Chris. Is it? Next one. Next one. Next one. That one. I'm going to show you this. This is a product slide, but I won't talk about product too much other than this right here. Default deny. And so what our whole goal was, I want to be able to declaratively state how my cloud works. And to do that, AWS is a deny-first world. So it means I can take permissions away by simply putting one deny in. What we did is expand that definition to service usage, third parties, all services that you do use, and all identities that exist in your cloud that are no longer around. We make it very easy to quickly take one part of your cloud or your entire cloud to a default deny state, meaning what you've said is okay is absolutely okay. The way AWS works, and it'll continue to function perfectly fine. If anything changes, new identities appear, new services get turned on by AWS. I don't want a service to magically appear in my environment and be usable by people in that world. I want it off by default. I have not said it should be allowed. We make all of these very, very easy. We also make it very easy to say, these are the third parties that should exist. No one else. I don't care if you deploy roles, they're not allowed. The role will sit there, but it can never be assumed, it can never be used. So you get a beautiful way of saying, in this part of my cloud, I know exactly what's okay because I've stated what it is. And then on the right, you'll see our on-demand access. So this is where we do JIT and something we call permissions on demand, which is how do we give things back? It's great to lock a cloud down, but clouds need to evolve. Right? That's the whole great thing about a cloud. It's dynamic. I can use things, and then I can not use them. I can use something new the next day. This is how we interact with your users to say, you're now doing something different. Did you mean to? If the answer is yes, we'll go get an approval, and we'll give it back like that, 6 seconds. Right? But if the answer is no, now you've got an interesting scenario in your hands. It was either completely unexpected, meaning somebody might be in here that we didn't know about, or I need to go talk to so-and-so, why are you trying to use Bedrock in production? We've never used it before. I want to stop there. We got 3 minutes.
I want to make a note
Yes.
here.
Sorry,
So I think the other thing is, especially as a leader, you have to learn how to respect like the developer experience and the developer workflow. You have to kind of go where they are. They're used to going into Slack. They're used to going in and saying, hey, can somebody do a PR real quick for me? This model, like they don't want to go to Jira. Can I open a ticket to go use this permission? So the ChatOps model is really, really effective. It allows you to work to take that approval process to where the developer is already living and the tools they're in. I can't emphasize how important that is, especially from I would say a layer 8 perspective, the political capital that you only have so much of. So I think that's really critical to understand.
That's a great point. I mean, it was, again, I should have mentioned that. It was one of the design criteria of the solution was, how do we do all of this, by the way? How do we do this without annoying everybody? Right? IAM changes are annoying, generally. That's why people get really upset when you say we're going to take permissions away. This method that we've implemented, ChatOps was a fundamental thing there, is how do we make identity security a team sport? In most organizations, it's not. We have it's the purview of few. And those, unfortunately, become the people who are the most hated people in the organization because they're the ones that dictate who can do and what can they do. This allows this to spread a bit. And we invoke or we engage with those teams as they make requests. We also allow those teams to self-approve if that's a desire in your part of your organization. You can absolutely say in development, I want control, but I want the developers to approve themselves. I just need audit, so I know what the heck's going on. They can approve themselves. Where in production, that's an entirely different team. If permissions start mutating in production, normally we never see self-approvals there. These become either cloud DevOps teams or SecOps teams, or somebody is doing that and keeping an eye on those environments. Thank you for that, Chris. That was a great one. 2 minutes, any questions? You got to give me one question. I can't talk for 22 minutes and not get one question. Something about AI. Wow, isn't that's, so again, I've talked about Bedrock. We have actually, it's been one of the most common requests currently, which is how can I control AI? There's a fear that AI is going to take over in some cases. When we talk to some people, AI is going to take over my cloud. We have some other customers that have a really strong perspective on, I need to make sure no third party can get anywhere near what we do from an AI perspective. We absolutely can help. So everything from service governance, third party access, as well as simply making sure that the models themselves and the agents that are associated to them are right-sized. We actually have some customers that use this to, I say, quote unquote, protect Bedrock. And they're quite surprised when they see an agent or a permission on demand request come over Slack saying, this agent just tried to do this. Are you sure you want to let it happen? Right? Because that agent just tried to do something quite sensitive. Maybe it was misconfigured. Maybe somebody gave it too much permission. Maybe somebody convinced the agent to do something on their behalf. This can absolutely help. Yes? Oh, that's excellent. Question is, how do we handle deployment roles? We all have them. Most people have them. Terraform, Pulumi, you name it. You got something that's terraforming into your world. We have 3 different ways we've seen it used. We have exemptions, so you can tell us a pattern, we'll never touch it. Right? So that's the common, that's the hammer. I don't want you to ever break my terraformers. I'm just going to completely exempt them from every protection, which is unfortunately the way we see a lot of people do it. We have the other end of the spectrum, which is they actually, because everything we recommend is based on activity in your world, often your terraformers show up as suggested exemptions when we show you the first view of your cloud. And if you exempt them accordingly on the services, we'll never touch them, as long as they never terraform something else that you never terraformed before. And at that point, all that will happen is a simple Slack message to somebody saying their terraformer is now trying to use Bedrock, has never used it before, do you want to let them, yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then off to the races they go. There's the third group, which are highly technical, where they terraform the firewall. And so during their pipelines, they actually reach out to the firewall, they reconfigure it, they let the things do, and then they reconfigure it on the way back out so that those roles sit there with no permissions at all. And so outside of deploy windows, they're completely benign.